Hello, my name's Ian Seeger from Pilot Career News. On the 6th and 7th of November, we held our very first virtual edition of Pilot Careers Live. We streamed over 30 different seminars with 60 speakers. There were 2 days packed full of great information. Of course, we recorded everything, and you're about to watch one of the videos from the event. Before you do, I just want to thank our sponsors, Bose, Alsim, Entro, and of course Poolies. Without them and without the exhibitors, it wouldn't be possible. The exhibitor pages are still live, so feel free to head on over there. Go to www.pilotcareerslive.com and click through to the exhibitors. There's loads of information, loads of downloads, all sorts of great stuff there for you. Anyway, enjoy the video, and if you find it useful, really appreciate it if you click subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye-bye. And welcome to the next session, Helicopter Pilot Career Pathways with Captain Sarah Bowen. Before I pass you over to Sarah and her excellent presentation, I just want to give you some housekeeping tips. There's a whole bunch of questions coming in via chat and via questions and elsewhere, and many of them can be answered really easily by many of the ATOs here exhibiting. So please feel free to go to the exhibitor pages, jump on their live chat, their one-to-one chat, or book a video conference with them and get your questions answered. If you need those answered by more than one person, then feel free to ask the same question to many ATOs to see what you end up with. Before we pass over to Sarah, I'd just like to thank our sponsors, Bose, for supporting the event, Alsim, Entrol, and Poolies. And if you're shopping at Poolies and you use code PCL at checkout, you'll get 5% off. So don't forget to check out the exhibitor pages if you've got any specific questions, that get them answered really easily. And then just a reminder that these presentations will be available online to registered participants for today and then to a wider audience at some point in the future. Sarah, can you hear me?
Hi Ian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for coming along and talking to us about helicopter pilot career pathways. I believe you have a presentation?
Yes, I do. Yes, hopefully you can see it up on the screen.
I can see that on the screen. If you'd like to take that one away, and then if I've got any questions or anything else, I'll ask those at the end, if that's okay.
Absolutely fine, no problem at all. Thank you.
Fantastic. Go for it. It's all yours.
So, hi everyone. I'm Sarah Bowen. I'm the Head of Training and Business Development Director at Helicentre Aviation Academy. So I'm here to talk to you about helicopter pilot career pathways today. And before we get started, I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. So there'll be an introduction about what I do, what my role is in the industry, and the company I work for as well, Helicentre. Why do we want to choose helicopters? Because I'm sure that lots of you here want to go into new aviation careers or enter an aviation career for the first time. And you might not have actually considered that helicopter pilot could be the career of choice, which industry sectors you could go into once you're qualified, the types of pathways you need to follow to actually achieve those goals, and the training routes that can get you there. We'll also have a look at then what to do next, what's the next steps, and how do you actually get started in the training progression through to your final career. So you can see pictured there one of our previous scholarship winners, Janine. Janine now works at Bristow Helicopters as a first officer on the S92, and I was privileged to be Janine's instructor for quite some time. I'll talk to you a little bit more about how you can possibly apply for scholarships and funding a little bit later on. But we'll get started, and we'll have a look at an introduction. So about me and my role, well, I'm not a search and rescue pilot, but I do join the dots between training and the final career. So I work really closely with our industry partner, Bristow Helicopters. This was a photograph taken on a careers day that we had with Bristow. So they brought their Humberside search and rescue crew in to talk to prospective pilots. And it was obviously very well received by everybody who was there. So what I do is I'm a pilot. I train instructors predominantly. I actually examine as well. I'm an FIE, a flight instructor examiner. And I have been in the industry for some time. My typical role is flying the Cadbury G2. So I'll train the instructors and test instructors or test pilots, commercial pilots, and revalidate instructors in typically the Cadbury or something like the Robinson R44. And this is my typical view from the office window. So how I got into flying, well, it was really from childhood. So just over 22 years ago, I was on a school sort of educational cruise. So quite a few years before that, I'd actually had a very short experience flying in a passenger helicopter from Malta to Gozo. But on this particular school excursion, we were sort of in the Mediterranean, and a guy landed on a ship. It was a search and rescue helicopter, and a girl on the ship had actually contracted meningitis and had to be airlifted off to shore. So everybody came out onto the deck. We were all very excited to see this helicopter landing, and it was really, it must have just sort of left some impression on me, because about 4 years later, I actually got the opportunity to fly as a passenger in a Jet Ranger. And it wasn't really until then it became apparent that was something I really wanted to do. And I thought, well, how can I do this? And once I'd experienced it, it was just so hard not to fall in love with the whole idea of becoming a helicopter pilot. So here I am. And since I've inspired lots of people into the industry, and I'd like to obviously do the same for everybody who's watching today, because you may not have experienced helicopters, you might not have considered that helicopter pilot could be a career that you could actually take as an alternative to the typical airline routes that many people go down. And so we're going to have a look really at where our pilots end up, so all the sorts of companies you can go to work for once you're qualified, and also why helicopters? Why would you choose helicopters over a different type of aviation career? So helicopters are versatile. You probably noticed over the past sort of 6 to 8 months that most helicopter operations are actually involved in national resilience. So unlike the fixed wing industry at the moment, the helicopter industry has actually stayed really robust, and the flight hours, certainly in our company, have increased since this time last year. We've hired more pilots than we did last year. We're supplying industry careers, pathways like oil and gas, search and rescue, helicopter emergency medical services, police. They've continued to operate throughout COVID, and it's really important that you realise that the helicopter industry is quite small. So whereas there might be thousands of airline pilots under training and lots of sort of career opportunities because people are sort of using fixed wing aircraft frequently, helicopters actually is a much smaller industry, and there are far fewer people being trained. Therefore, it's very, very close knit, and with the right connections, you can actually go into your chosen career pathway and have a very, very good opportunity to go straight into work. So there are some myths and some sort of misconceptions about helicopters and actually training into jobs, in that you don't have to be ex-military. Lots of people think you have to be ex-military to be a helicopter pilot. You don't. There's lots and lots of ways to get into different industry sectors. You don't have to have thousands of hours. There are ways to build those hours quickly, and there are ways to get into the relevant sectors in a sort of formalized way. So where could we end up? Where could you end up as a helicopter pilot if you were starting a career today and you qualified in, say, 12 to 18 months? What could you do with that qualification? So we're going to take a snapshot of a few different industry sectors here, and I'll explain to you in a moment the ways that you can actually achieve that goal of being a pilot for these particular sectors. So offshore oil and gas, as I said earlier, Helicentre Aviation's partnered with Bristow Helicopters. We work really closely to look at pilots who are coming through training and what sort of opportunities they could get. So in offshore oil and gas, pilots can be hired with minimal hours straight out of the academy. The requirements are to have a commercial pilot's license with an instrument rating. And there are lots of different types of roster within the job. It can be very family friendly. There's lots of time off. They tend to work equal time rosters. So flying about or being on duty about 182 days of the year. And salaries are sort of starting from the late 50s, so around about 58,000, right into six figures, up to in excess of 140,000 for very experienced captains. So largely comparable with the airlines. So that's a route that many people really have their sort of heart set on, going down that route to become an oil and gas pilot. But what you probably don't know is that Bristow also have the search and rescue contract. So in terms of search and rescue, there's about 300 pilots between oil and gas and search and rescue, and it's about a 50-50 split. So if you are in oil and gas, you might get selected to move sideways into search and rescue. But search and rescue pilots tend to be recruited from within oil and gas. So it's a really good opportunity if you're really, really keen to become a search and rescue pilot to actually have a good chat with our careers team, and we can actually look at the best way to get you in touch with the right people that can actually talk to you about what the requirements are to go into search and rescue. But you don't need to have thousands of hours. You need to have come through the right pathway, and like oil and gas, where we have had pilots leave us and take oil and gas positions with sort of just over 250 hours, you can equally get into a SAR role through the oil and gas pathway as well. So if that's something you're really interested in, then obviously don't think it's out of reach. As I said earlier, you don't have to be ex-military to get these jobs. In fact, it's turned around quite a lot in recent years. There are more self-funded pilots going into the end roles than military now. So you can also become a police pilot. So there are routes into becoming a police helicopter pilot. And again, there's sort of different rosters, but there tends to be typically 4 on 4 off with night shifts. And it's sort of the mid 60s would be what you'd be sort of earning as an onshore police helicopter pilot. In terms of air ambulance, so you've got the Children's Air Ambulance, you've got HEMS, Helicopter Emergency Medical Services, similar rosters to the police, 4 on 4 off typically, but they do give you lots of time off as well. So you can end up with, typically you can have 4 days working and then 12 days off. So there are sort of quite interesting rosters, which are quite nice. You do get good rest periods as a HEMS pilot as well. So in terms of the salaries, they're slightly lower onshore because of the nature of the job, and it's charity based. So somewhere starting as a co-pilot, first officer, around the mid 30s, and they can go up to captain at around about 65,000 typically. The 2 main operators for air ambulance are SAS, Specialist Aviation Services, and Babcock, and they tend to be sort of comparable really, and it tends to be about the sort of average salary band there. If you've got a post like a chief pilot post, or you take another role within the company, you can probably increase your earnings by about another £10,000. So that's the sort of scope of what you could earn. But let's be honest, most people want to fly helicopters because they're cool, it's exciting, they're doing a job which is really helping people, and that's really, really important. But obviously getting paid is a bonus as well, and it's a fantastic career for life really. So that's air ambulance there. You've also got things like utility, so electricity survey, pipeline survey, onshore, photography, thermal imaging, that kind of stuff. So it's quite varied again. Salaries are quite variable in those sorts of roles because it depends what it is that you're doing. But that's also a different route you can take. And then last but not least, let's talk about instructing and examining, because we hire more instructors than anything else, and we typically need really we should be at about 22 instructors. That's our sort of ideal number. We always seem to be short, and we're always recruiting the next instructor sort of 2 or 3 years ahead. So instructing is a very, very good way to build your hours, to get those hours in the logbook, and valuable experience as well, because you're doing lots of emergencies, you're doing lots of workload management, you're trying to get through to ab initio pilots, you've got to deal with taking over if they get something wrong. So you end up with very sharp skills, and it's really quite interesting. You get a lot of hands-on flying when you're teaching ab initio pilots as well, so people who don't have any experience. The examiner certificate is underpinned by the instructor certificate. So if you want to be an examiner, that is something that you can be sponsored through later on when you've got some instructing experience. But there's a brilliant thing about instructing, which actually leads you on to a lot of these other career pathways that require some more hours. So we'll just look at that just now. So how do we get from flying this little Cadbury G2 to flying something like an S92? Well, you can, as I said earlier, go straight from training into an instrument rating and then go offshore. You can instruct, you can become an instructor, so you'll be flying the Cadbury for somewhere between 700 and 1500 hours. And as an instructor, you're typically logging around about 700 to 900 hours a year. So very, very quickly you get the experience you need to take the other roles. For example, if you want to be a police pilot, you need to aim to get up to somewhere above 1500 hours. If you want to fly HEMS, you need to get somewhere between 700 and 1500 hours. And these are the typical hours that our pilots leave with to go on to those next roles. And instructing is an extremely quick and efficient and enjoyable as well way to get those hours and that experience under your belt. So really, really important that you don't rule out being a flight instructor, because it gets you straight into a job. As head of training, I've also in charge of recruiting instructors, and I can tell you that as an instructor on the FI course, that I don't let somebody start that course unless we've got a definite job for them. So we'll take all our pilots off the instructor course and they will have a position working full-time as an FI to get those initial hours and also be part of a team and learn some valuable skills for the rest of their careers. And it's also important to remember that instructing gives you skills that later could lead on to becoming a training captain on a multi-crew helicopter. You can be an examiner, a type rating examiner. So there are lots and lots of benefits to doing that. So I think to summarize, the pathways are going to be either go straight through CPLH-IR, so commercial license instrument rating, and then go offshore with minimal hours, or go through to commercial pilot, get your instructor course completed, and then you can actually decide when you get your hours, anywhere between 700 and 1500 hours, on whether you want to then jump into applying for a police role, air ambulance, any of the other utility type roles that we mentioned as well, and any sort of corporate jobs as well that you might want to go into. So those are the sort of typical routes, and we really help people to find their way in their career. We don't just train pilots. So I'm really, really excited about people going into the first job, because it's really satisfying to see people go through from that first career chat or trial lesson all the way through to an actual full-time career flying. So training routes, you've probably heard loads and loads about training routes with the airlines over the last day or two. It's pretty much the same with helicopters. You've got integrated and you've got modular. And there's going to be arguments for and against each one, but it really comes down to your personal choice and your timescale. So in terms of which route to choose, it's largely going to depend on whether you can commit to full-time training, or whether you can, or whether you'd be better off working it around your job, and really just working out a plan. And everybody's different, so everybody can have a kind of bespoke plan to get to where you want to be. But really, it's the same license, it's the same commercial pilot's license, whichever way you decide to do it. So whether it's integrated or modular, both options are available and they will get you to the same place. Obviously, there are probably lots of questions that you've got, and I believe there is a question and answer session a little bit later, but you're very welcome to obviously find me. We do have a stand, a virtual stand here. It's Helicentre Aviation, and we can give you plenty of careers advice and sort of get you on the right track if you are looking to seriously become a helicopter pilot. So just to finish off, really, scholarships. Scholarships do exist. They are awarded annually by, certainly I can tell you about the Helicentre scholarships because we've been awarding these since 2012, helping people get on with their chosen career path more quickly. And in terms of industry sponsorships and scholarships, yeah, there have been other programs out there. We can see Janine here in the cockpits of an S92. Janine was our very own CPL scholarship winner in 2017 and later went on to win a sponsorship from Bristow Helicopters for the full instrument rating, and that's what she does for a job now. She's a first officer in the S92. So we've awarded plenty of other scholarships. We've got James here, who is another scholarship winner. He's had his commercial course paid for by Helicentre, and he's being mentored by Bristow towards an oil and gas career as well. So he was our very first Bristow scholarship winner. And then, of course, we've got our 4 cadets who are Bristow Cadets, and they were selected last year in a fully sponsored programme, the first of its kind in many years, that's taken these 4 right through from ab initio, and they're just preparing for their CPL skill test now. They've just passed all their ATPL HIR exams, and they're on their way to becoming full-time helicopter pilots. So these things do happen; they are out there. So my advice would be, don't give up. There are part-funded scholarships available, so if you take the initiative to get started, then often the path can become easier and cheaper for you, because if you're serious and committed to it, then you'll stand out and you'll be considered for one of these awards. But whatever it is that you do decide you'd like to do, it involves helicopters. Obviously, we're here to help. I do deliver a career seminar. This is obviously only a 20-minute session, so there's only so much we can talk about. But there is a full 3-hour seminar that I do deliver online. So if you'd like to actually find out a little bit more about careers, there is actually one next Saturday, and you can sign up for free for that. So that will give you more information about helicopter pilot careers. So I can guarantee that whatever you decide to do with helicopters, you are going to get the best view from your office window. And I obviously want to wish everybody the very, very best in their future endeavours, whatever it is you do in aviation. I'd like to wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll see you flying helicopters in the near future, because the industry does need pilots. So keep working hard and don't give up.
Well, thank you very much for that, Sarah. That was absolutely fantastic and well put together presentation. I can already see there's a whole bunch of questions coming for you for our Q&A session, which I believe you're about to join, and me too. And then, as you said, if anyone doesn't get their question answered there, or they want more, then hop on over to the Helicentre Aviation stand, and you can chat live with Sarah. You can book video calls or whatever, and get your questions answered there. So thank you very much again for that presentation. I look forward to catching up with you in the Q&A session next door shortly, and I shall talk to you soon. Thank you.